courtroom, the atmosphere itself seemed to tremble. The sharp crack of the gavel cut through the air as Judge Beryl Howell spoke with finality. "Congresswoman Crockett, you will not turn my courtroom into a political theater." An electric silence followed, the kind that makes a room feel smaller, as if the entire nation had leaned forward at once. Yet standing firm, unmoved like stone against rushing water, was Jasmine Crockett. She did not flinch, she did not lower her gaze. Her eyes remained locked on the bench, and when she spoke, her voice was steady, clear, unbroken. "Your Honor, with all due respect, the Constitution does not end at your bench." This was no longer a personal disagreement. It was no longer a procedural dispute. What unfolded in that moment was a struggle for the soul of American democracy itself, a collision between entrenched authority and a new generation unafraid to challenge power when it oversteps. And before the story goes further, friends, this is where community matters. Subscribe, join this space, ring the bell, because here, history is not just observed, it's examined, understood, and carried forward. The Washington Federal Courthouse had seen history before. Its stone walls held echoes of landmark rulings, desperate pleas, and the measured footsteps of lawyers burdened by constitutional weight. But on this day, something different hung in the air, something volatile, something unforgettable. The gallery was packed. Reporters filled the back rows, notebooks open, phones vibrating with urgent alerts. Shoulder to shoulder sat civil rights advocates, eyes fixed on the front. Law students leaned forward, scribbling not just words but the meaning of what was unfolding before them. Presiding over it all was Judge Beryl Howell, 63 years old. Her silver hair caught the courtroom lights. Her steel-gray eyes reflected decades on the bench. A veteran of the federal judiciary, she was known for discipline, for impatience with what she saw as grandstanding, for an unwavering commitment to order. Attorneys entered her courtroom expecting no warmth, only sharp interruptions, clipped remarks, and the relentless control of time itself. To many, she embodied the old guard, the authority of the robe, the weight of tradition, the unyielding face of the institution. Standing opposite her was someone forged differently. Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman from Texas, civil rights attorney turned legislator, a woman shaped not in marble halls but in community courtrooms and grassroots battles. At 42, she carried the fire of a generation that had witnessed injustice up close and refused to stay silent. Her natural hair, her navy suit, her composed posture, every detail spoke not of image but of purpose. When those two worlds collided, judicial authority and unapologetic advocacy, the sparks ignited something far greater than a legal argument. The case centered on newly enacted election laws, measures that narrowed early voting windows, restricted mail-in ballots, tightened identification requirements. Supporters called it election security. Critics called it voter suppression. To Judge Howell, it was statutory interpretation, precedent, the limits of legislative power. To Jasmine Crockett, it was democracy itself on trial. As she rose to speak, she carried more than briefs and citations. She carried generations denied access to the ballot, voices silenced by paperwork, citizens turned away by technicalities. "These laws strike at the foundation of our republic," Crockett said, her voice unwavering. "They do not strengthen democracy, they strangle it." A ripple of gasps moved through the gallery. Pens scratched furiously. Judge Howell's eyes narrowed. "This court does not entertain political speeches," the judge snapped. "Focus on the law." The first interruption, sharp, dismissive, corrective. But Crockett did not retreat. She adjusted her papers, met the judge's gaze, and continued. She cited precedent. She invoked constitutional principles. She presented evidence, data, history, charts, methodically, deliberately. Again, the gavel struck. This is a courtroom, not a history lecture. The second interruption came louder, heavier. The room tightened. Legal scholars whispered. Civil rights attorneys exchanged looks of recognition. This wasn't routine friction. This was pressure building. Still, Crockett pressed forward. She spoke of the 14th Amendment, of equal protection, of the Voting Rights Act, not as theory, but as a living shield. Then the moment arrived. The gavel slammed. Enough. Congresswoman Crockett, I will not allow this courtroom to become political theater. Silence fell like thunder. Every spectator leaned forward, knowing what came next would matter far beyond that hearing. And in that silence, Jasmine Crockett stood taller. Your Honor, she said calmly, with all due respect, the Constitution does not end at your bench. The room seemed to tilt. The gallery gasped. Reporters froze. Judge Howell stiffened. This was no longer argument. It was confrontation, authority versus principle, robe versus conviction. The silence afterwards pulsed with tension. The judge sat rigid, gavel clenched, disbelief etched across her face. The Constitution does not end at your bench, Crockett repeated, measured, reverent, unshaken. Judge Howell rose her voice. You will confine yourself to precedent or you will be held in contempt. Crockett stepped forward. I am presenting precedent. Brown versus Board of Education, Harper versus Virginia Board of Elections, Reynolds versus Sims, cases this court cannot ignore. Gasps erupted again. Phones lit up. For the first time in years, Judge Howell was losing control of her courtroom. When constitutional arguments are dismissed as politics, the law is diminished. When equal protection is brushed aside, democracy weakens. And when a sworn representative is told she does not understand the Constitution, this court wounds itself. Every word struck hard. Judge Howell rose, finger pointed. You will not lecture this court. Crockett raised her hand, firm, respectful. I am not lecturing. I am reminding. Then came the line that would echo nationwide. Article 1 of the Constitution established the branch I serve in. It created the court you now sit upon. That authority does not place you above the Constitution. It binds you to it. For nearly 30 seconds, no one moved. Then the flood began. Reporters rushed out. Headlines exploded. Civil rights leaders spoke out. Law students knew they had witnessed history. The Constitution does not end at your bench. The words traveled fast. The ACLU praised Crockett. The NAACP called her stand essential. Legal scholars debated Judge Howell's conduct. Complaints poured in. Ethics reviews whispered quietly behind closed doors. Meanwhile, Crockett returned to Capitol Hill emboldened. Her voice sharpened. Her resolve deepened. I've already explained constitutional law to a federal judge. I'm not intimidated. That line went viral too. Law schools taught the moment. Mock trials recreated it. Activists rallied behind it. Donations surged. A movement found fuel. This was not just a courtroom clash. It was civics brought to life. And at its heart stood a simple truth. The Constitution does not belong to robes or gavels. It belongs to the people. So now the question turns outward. Was Jasmine Crockett's stand at the beginning of a new era or a rare flash of courage? That answer belongs not to history books, but to citizens. Share your thoughts, join the conversation, subscribe, and stay with us. Because here, we don't just watch history, we carry it forward. And remember this, judges may strike their gavels, and politicians may raise their voices, but the true power of democracy has always rested in the hands of the people. People who believe, as Jasmine Crockett reminded us all, that the Constitution does not end at any bench.